Welcome to Audio Path, where we take a real look at making a living in music.
Ever wonder what it's like to make a living in music outside of the big industry hubs? We're here to pull back the curtain with raw, unfiltered conversations about the ups, downs, and everything in between.
Join us, John Kimbrough,
And Trent Harrison,
as we share real-world insights, experiences, and stories from behind the scenes in the music industry. Whether you're an artist, audio nerd, or you just love music, we've got something for you.
this is Audio Path, where the hustle is real and the passion runs deep. All right, welcome to Audio Path. Here we are for another episode 8, I think.
I think that's what we're on.
Episode 8.
I think we're there.
We are.
That's right.
Yeah. How you doing, John?
I'm great, Trent. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, man.
Sweet.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? So today we're going to be talking about basically our workflow, our day-to-day.
Day to day. Yeah. Our
Mhm.
kind of our day in the life video.
Day in the
What-
life of an audio
of
engineer.
audio engineer. And with that, we're going to try to highlight some administrative things, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not all fun and games, right?
There are fun and there are games,
There are.
but it's not all fun and games.
Not all. So we're going to talk about some things that I think we both wish we had some guidance or maybe learned a little bit more about early on, which is like scheduling, time management, boundaries, and then
Yes.
that will go into workflow and kind of our day in the life, and like those things will be kind of sprinkled in, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. And of course, we'll share some stories.
Yep, this
along the
one's going to
way.
be a lot of, in earlier episodes, if you're just now coming to Audio Path, welcome. Thanks for joining us. In earlier episodes, we talked a good bit about our journeys, and we even had one episode that basically took us from, day one to where we are now. But I think in this episode, we're going to spend a lot more time in the now
Mm-hmm.
and what's going on in our current, careers and where we are now. And we won't spend too much time talking about how we got to this point. So
Yeah, exactly.
if you need to know more to be like, well, what is he talking about? Rewind, go back to the other episode.
That's right.
Check it out. And then this one will make maybe a little more.
And while you're at it,
sense.
like and subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
So you don't miss new ones.
So you don't miss the next episode.
That's right.
All
Cool.
right.
Well, let's dive into it. Trent, what does a day look like for you, man?
Man, this is a fun question because, the one thing I like about this job a lot is that every day is a little bit different.
Mhm.
It seems like it's not the same Groundhog Day, repeat the same thing every day and then go home and wait for the weekend. It's far from that. It's it can go in a number of ways. And so let me just describe a couple of different days. And then, it's almost like some days can be a little repetitive, but most of the time there's a little something different each day.
Mhm.
So I would say on a typical day or one of a couple different typical days, I'm either, I wake up in the morning, I will check the email real quick to see if there's anything urgent that I need to take care of to let somebody know, maybe something based on a time frame that they need to be able to get to at a certain time. I'll check that real quick. If nothing is super urgent, I'll, go through my morning routine and then we'll head into the studio. If it's a tracking day or recording day, then of course it will depend on what time the session starts. Typically I run sessions from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now sometimes I work with bands that work day jobs and they can't do that time frame, so the session will have to start after they're done with work. And so then that will be a later. So in those, I can talk about that day second. But anyway, so if that's the case, I have a recording day, then one of two things is happening. Either I have enough information that either the night or the end of the day prior or the day before, I've done some setup for that day. And so I like to set up as much as I possibly can before the session starts so that we're not burning any studio time with setup time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I think that's something that I've learned more and more as the years have gone on. In the earlier days, we would spend a good bit of time setting up, and it kind of, it's not like intensive, but you start off with like a slow moment, and it kind of makes the day not move in a good flow,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to try to hit the ground running as much as you can, and it's inevitable that you'll have to take a break and set something else up in the studio. You're not going to be totally, I mean, it's definitely dependent on space.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to set it all up and it's going to work for the whole day. You're going to have to probably break something down, use some of those microphones in a different scenario, maybe in a different room or in a different way, and do a reset up. But if you can have your first thing ready to go when everyone shows up, that's great. So I like to get that going. I like to do that. So then we'll get into tracking. I'll try to be here, 15, 20 minutes before the artist shows up, get everything fired up, ready to go. Then the artist gets here. We have, a little bit of cordial chit chat, and, especially if we don't know each other well,
Mm-hmm.
or even if we do, we'll sit around and talk a little bit. But like to be trying to make moves towards doing something while we're doing that, right? And so I'll be like, making sure that things are in the right place. They'll be bringing in some equipment. I'll help them do that. And then we'll sit down and we'll briefly go over the goal for the day. And let's just say, for example, we're setting out to record the drums for a full-length record. Okay, so we know we're going to have upwards of 8 to 10 to maybe 12 songs to do. On the back half of that, 12 might be too much for one day, but we're going to try to get as many of those songs done in the days as possible. So that's kind of the goal. Certainly with the drummer, usually the whole band is here for moral support and all that. And so we know what we're going to do. We're going to try some different tones out. So we're going to do a little bit of tone testing before we start recording. And what that would mean would be we would try some different snare drums depending on the song that we're going to start with. Maybe some different cymbals. Either the drummer, in a lot of cases, has brought his own kit, so he's got it pretty well set, the sound that he wants already. But some songs might call for something a little different, so we'll have that either prepared or off to the side or ready to go, or whichever way. And then we'll got to fire everything up, test it, see how everything's coming through the microphones, see if we need to make any microphone adjustments. And then at that point, he gets to warm up a little bit, and then we're off to the races.
Nice.
Yeah. So days like that we'll spend probably 3 to 4 hours straight
Mm-hmm.
in that mode of recording. And a deeper look into what that is he's in there, I'm in the control room, the band's in the control room with me, the drummer's in the live room, and we're all listening to what he's doing. We're probably viewing him on the camera, TV system, and then we're communicating back and forth on his parts are probably set, but there could be some ideas that fly out, and maybe he'll try something different for an ending. We'll communicate that with him, but typically he's going in there, he's taking, I like to do at least 3 takes to get a song going. By the third take, they're usually settled in pretty good, and that take could be a keeper take if they're well rehearsed ahead of time and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could be the one that we use as our foundation take to build on top of. See if there's any mistakes in that take, which we could take a piece of take 2 or 1 to replace it. If, let's say, you just made a random mistake, and maybe we just fix that with that, right? And so that process, he goes in, he does all that, he comes in here, we do some listening, we talk about it, we see how everyone feels. He might go back in there to do a punch in, and that process repeats several times throughout the day until we get all the songs done, or as many as we can get done within our time frame, right? So that's just an example with drums. So that's kind of a tracking day, but it applies for almost any other instrument, really. So a day like that is a pretty intense day, or it can be. At least it's, it can be a little mentally exhausting by the end of the day. So on days like that, I'm probably not doing whole much else after that.
Yeah.
Like 8 hours of recording, you're probably going to be spent
Mm-hmm.
at that point. In my earlier days, I used to run some long 12-hour sessions and such, but I don't even know if we were getting anything good after about 8 or 9 hours, you know.
Right.
This is negligible. We'd come back in the next day and be like, maybe we should redo that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You get excited in the moment, or you're like, well, we're all here, you know. But
there's a law of diminishing returns.
There is, and that comes into play, and it's part of the time management aspect of it all. And so that's a typical recording day for me. Now, there's multiple different kinds of days, and so that's one. Another one could be just an editing or mixing day. So let's say I did that drum session, and let's say we did get all the songs done. Then the next day, I am most likely, as long as it's scheduled that way, editing those drums. And so then I'm in here by myself, working in the control room on editing those drums to probably quantizing, like we've talked about before. It's just me, the metronome, and the drums, and I mute all of the scratch tracks, and I get in there and I edit the drums.
You make them perfect.
I try to make them as close to perfect as we can. Got to leave a little human in there.
Little humanism.
Yeah, a little humanism in there. But yeah, so that's another type of day that happens ever so often. And that's a tedious day. I mean, that's a lot of listening just straight through with music, and it's mostly just drums. It's not exactly the sexiest day in the studio.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to talk about because it's something that people need to be prepared for, that there are people that do that for most of their days, that they maybe work at a bigger studio with other engineers, and they're responsible for editing the album before it goes into mixing.
Yep.
And so they do that not just 1 day or 2 days a week, they do that 5 days a week. Yeah.
And if you get a studio internship, that's probably mostly what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Is editing.
Yeah. You'll be running around. You'll be trying to get things in the right places, maybe moving some microphones, doing some cables, probably getting a lot of coffee, doing a whole bunch of that, running errands. But then you'll be doing the grunt work, which could be the editing.
Yeah.
And that's probably what you'd be doing a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like go in the basement and move the plate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're super lucky.
If you're in a great studio.
Yeah, if you're in an awesome studio.
Yeah, you'll be that guy.
You'll be doing that.
Yeah.
Which is be pretty cool. But so those type of days, like I said, not the sexiest day, but still a good day. A lot of great progress is made during the editing process, like we've mentioned before. Shouldn't be overlooked. But then we move on to mix days. Now, mix days are probably my favorite days. That's where, here again, I'm usually in the studio by myself, working on the mix, getting the mix the way that I want it to be, following the references that the band has given me to as a little bit of a guide, and trying to mesh those things together.
Yeah.
Now, something that should probably be talked about a little bit, and this will vary for each person, but mixing is something that I feel like you can't just, it kind of goes back to the last episode where we were talking about ear fatigue. You can't go for too terribly long in the mixing process without getting burnt or getting ear fatigue, and to the point that you're not confident or sure. Well, you might feel confident in the moment that you're making the right decision of, the balance or any type of EQ, compression, or reverb or effect or whatever, move, pan, whatever. But you might regret that and come back to it the next day and be like, what was I doing? Like,
what was I thinking?
Yeah, I had it right an hour before I went down that path. And then you just burnt an hour.
Right.
Which comes back to our time management comment that is not great, right? every second counts
Yep.
sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like to do when it comes to mix days is divide it up a little bit. Sometimes I'll mix for the most I can probably do straight is 4 hours. That's probably the longest I can go in working on either a song or 2 songs probably. Usually just one, honestly, but could jump to another one if I've finished up one, moved to the next. 4 hours straight is probably the max. But even then, I'll maybe work for 2 hours, try to get into like a flow state where I'm really concentrated on it and I'm making a lot of great, moves and decisions in a shorter period of time. And then as soon as I start to break from that, or I feel like I'm getting into some of the weeds of the mix or some of the like tinier details with effects and stuff, I'll take a step back from it. And, depending on what time I start, if I started that in the morning, it was probably lunchtime, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take a lunch break, kind of clear my head, try not to listen to anything if I can, and then come back to it with a little fresh, not the freshest, but a fresher perspective, and then try to do that process again, maybe another 2 hours of that. And then at that point, even if I feel like I could keep going, I usually try to stop myself. It's not to waste time. And then, well, what do I do with the rest of the day? Well, a number of things. It could be one of those where I have a tracking day the next day, so I'll do some setup in preparation for that other project, or it could be the same project. Get set up for that for a little while. Emails, administrative stuff, phone calls, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Updating my website, checking out, some other accounting stuff, anything like that. You got to spend time doing that stuff if you end up running your own business. If you're working for another studio, okay, you might not have, but you'll still have the email part, you'll still have the phone call part, you'll still have some communication, some networking, some stuff that you got to do. So I try to work some of that stuff in on mixed days so that I'm utilizing the day and being productive, but I'm not burning out my ears by just mixing all day long.
Yep.
So that's another one. In addition to, there's mastering. I would throw mastering in on that as well. Work on that for a while. Try not to burn myself out on that. John does a lot more mastering work than I do, so I'm gonna let him talk about that more. But those are kind of like 2 to 3 different kind of days: the recording, editing, and mixing, mastering kind of days. And then I also run sound at Live at Ted's in Wilmington. And so then those days are like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's a whole nother type of thing. So I'm doing live sound work there. Those are usually about 5-hour gigs. And so I show up for, earlier in the day, let's say it's a Friday, for example. If it's a Friday, then I'll probably try to pull just a half day in the studio. So maybe I'm here at 10 and I'm either doing some mixing or editing or maybe a recording session, a short one if that's possible. Try to break around 2, take some time off, do whatever I need to do, run some errands, just relax a little bit, kind of have my break for the day in the middle of the day, and then show up to sound check around 5:30 usually. So it's going to be a long day, so I like to give myself a little bit of time to rest if possible. It doesn't always work out that way, but if possible, try to do that so that I'm not totally burnt for the show, right?
Yeah.
So that, 5:30 sound check. Sound checks, doors are at 7, so we got about an hour and a half with the band to get everything right, test everything, make sure their monitor mixes are right, make sure the house mix sounds good. And then I'll do other other venue necessities, making sure the bar's ready. Whitney, my wife, is usually there doing most of that while I'm doing sound check, so it's usually in pretty good shape by the time I do it. But then doors open, so then I'm scanning tickets, serving drinks, going through all of that till the show starts. Then I switch gears back to sound engineer mode and run the show out in the audience
Yep.
and work the show there. 2-hour long show. There's a little intermission. So then I switch back to bartender in the intermission. And we do that for a little while. The band takes a break. Then they come back. They finish out the second set, back to engineering. And then afterwards, close everything down, break down, pack up. They all pack up, load out. I pack up, put things where they need to be. And then I tend to the bar and we clean up. And that's that. So that's a very condensed show version of what
Yeah.
happens there. But yeah, so that's kind of another day because of the other venture that I'm into that I also have. Saturdays could be similar. Usually don't work in the studio on Saturday if I can help it. And so we'll spend time with family, hang out with my wife. Maybe we'll, if it's a nice day outside, go for a bike ride, do something like that, or just chill. So until the show, and then we'll do the show part. So there's that. Sunday, we do a midday show. So that's like usually don't do any studio work on Sunday because the show falls right in the middle of the day. I usually have to be down there about 1:30 to 2 for sound check. The show is the doors are at 3. The show's from 4 to 6. So that basically takes the day. I have a chill morning. And then, maybe we'll go to dinner or something on Sunday night and, wrap up the week.
And then do it all over again.
And then do it all over again in some form or capacity of one way
Yep.
or another. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the basics, the general overview of what a day in the life is for me. Like I said, there's basically 4 different types of days that cycle through the week, and it may not be that Monday I'm always doing mixing. That's not the case. The scheduling aspect, which we can get into a little more detail about after John tells you about his day, is a complex component, right? So with that being said, John, tell me about your day. What is a day in the life of John Kimbrough?
Sure, yeah. You have 4 different versions of days. I don't know how many I have.
Yeah, you're into some stuff, huh?
Yeah, man. I'll just give a few examples, and I'll try to keep them pretty brief. But there are 2 that I kind of want to hit on because I think you, as the listener, will find it kind of interesting. So we've already talked about some of the stuff that I do. Have a small home studio, basically just a control room, and I do a lot of mastering there. And in addition to that, though, I do a lot of video work too. And so, but I also do a lot of post-production audio for film, and I do some sound design and just kind of like all kinds of things, as a full-time freelance person, and as somebody who has interests in a lot of different areas, like my days can vary widely.
Yeah.
So, I'll tell you the things that are consistent, though. Number 1, I wake up the very latest, even though I can set my own schedule, the very latest I wake up any day is 7:30. That's like the latest I let myself sleep in. I'm not a morning person at all. I hate mornings.
Yeah.
I, joke with my wife all the time because she knows this about me at this point, that like the hardest thing I'm going to do any day is get out of bed. And it's not like I'm depressed. I just truly hate mornings.
I agree with that. I am not either. I mean,
Yes.
as I just said, my sessions start at 10 a.m.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I'm vibing with that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm
let's
still
go.
pulling that 8 hours, but they don't start
Exactly.
early. And it has something to do with who we work with, right?
True.
Musicians are out late at night. They're playing gigs, and they're probably not going to be up. I mean, it's hard for me to get anyone to the studio before 10 a.m. Sometimes they're like, can we start at noon?
Right.
I'm like,
you're like,
okay.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. So, and all of this is in the context of if I'm home.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm walking through. So wake up, do the normal stuff, do some ear training like I was talking about earlier. That's kind of part of my daily routine in the morning. I'm not a huge breakfast person, so sometimes I eat breakfast, sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on what I feel like my body needs. I used to do a lot of coffee, but I don't do coffee anymore. Now I do a lot of teas, so like decaf teas, something. I just love like a warm cup in my hand.
That's
love
good
that.
for you, yeah.
So typically, like after I finish that whole process up, I go over and I just check email. Basically see like, okay, is there anything that like I missed yesterday that I really need to like get on top of today? And I start kind of prioritizing stuff. Then I'll, typically like grab a quick shower or, like go do a quick run and then like grab a shower or whatever. And then I start working on whatever. So I start working typically around like 8:30 to 9 most days if I'm doing stuff at home. Whether I'm, diving into, fixing some audio for like post-production or doing some sound design, editing video, whatever. Whatever that looks like, I get going around 9. Typically work on whatever I'm doing until about 12:30, 1. And by that time I'm ready to eat something. So, I don't actually, I try to eat out like as little as possible just because it's getting more and more expensive, frankly. So I'll usually just go to the kitchen, whip something up, during that time, try to like walk my dog, and then go back, to whatever I was working on, and typically work till about 5:15. That's when my wife usually gets home from her job, and try to cut it off at 5:15.
Yeah.
And just be like, all right, 5:15 is it.
Yeah.
And, then just try to have the evening to either, I'm a big rock climber, so either like go to the climbing gym and like get a workout in, go to the regular gym with my wife, or walk the dog. Again, we have an Australian Shepherd, so like she needs tons of walking.
Yeah.
So we will like walk her together or whatever, and then just have the evening.
Yeah.
So, but wrapped up in there is some real administrative type stuff. So like, if you work for yourself, you set your own schedule.
Yep.
And you have to actually set that schedule. So you have to, go through and ideally you have people reaching out there like, hey, heard about you through such and such, or like, I get a website inquiry or whatever, and I've got to like schedule time to respond to them to try and set something up.
Yep.
I get asked a lot of the time like, hey, are you available these dates? We have a show. We would love to have you out to mix that show or whatever. And so I've got to do all of that coordination. So, sometimes scheduling flights myself, finding places to stay or whatever. Not always, but all that has to kind of happen somewhere. Ideally, you would try to put that like on a certain part of a day, but sometimes it's just wrapped up in there.
It's hard to, yeah.
Yeah. So similar to what Trent was talking about, to fight ear fatigue, I typically will just give myself like after about an hour to an hour and a half, unless I'm like in a real good flow state with whatever I'm mixing or editing, I'll just hit the pause button and I'll just do a little bit of admin work. And it's enough to kind of break it up for me.
Yep.
Some people don't like doing it that way. They like just putting it all in one. I'm not really that guy. I like to just kind of take small breaks and use that time for admin work.
Yep.
So those are kind of like typically what I'm doing now if I'm home.
Yeah.
So like I'm home.
What do you think the percentage is?
It's like 50-50 probably
50-50
at this point. And it's probably like coming into summertime, like the whole month of June, I'm literally out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So if I'm out, here's what it looks like. Let me talk the listeners through if you're in like a touring or a corporate type situation, because some people may not know some of how this works.
Yeah.
So let's just start with corporate. So if you're hired to mix a corporate show, say like a big, conference or whatever, it's like happening in a ballroom at a hotel, then typically the way it works, if you're working with a production company that's worth their salt, they are scheduling like, they're giving you like a full schedule basically ahead of time. There's going to be a travel day, sometimes a travel and a load-in day. And there's going to be like all the different days of work. And then there's going to be another, on the end of it, there's going to be another travel day and or like load out day. Okay. Most of the companies I work with are not quote unquote white glove companies.
Okay.
So what that means, if you are hired as a white glove, it means you show up and your station is already set by stagehands and you just walk up to the console and you start mixing.
Yeah, that's nice.
That is rare.
Yeah.
Like super rare. And in fact, some people have kind of a chip on their shoulder and they're like, oh, I've been doing this so long, like I'm just going to white glove it. I don't need to be setting up, like that's beneath me.
Right.
Don't be that guy. Plain and simple. Don't be that guy. So anyway, most of the crews that I work with are not white glove crews. And what that means is, yeah, we have stagehands, but you're going to show up, you're going to be a part of loading in, setting up, even if it's not audio. Like you are hands-on in doing whatever is needed to get done by the deadline. Okay. So if it's one of those, let me just walk through kind of like a week that looks like that for me. Let's say I'm scheduled, to be A1, audio 1, or A2, audio 2 for a show. Travel day, which is typically like a lower rate because they're paying like mileage if you're driving or they're paying for your flights or whatever. You show up, and then if it's also load in, what that means is like there's a truck that's coming with tons of equipment. And ideally there's like, they've hired stagehands as well. And you are unloading all of the equipment in the truck. You're placing it everywhere, whether it's like, in a stadium context or whether you're like in a ballroom at a hotel. It's kind of the same whether you're doing like a corporate or like a touring kind of deal. And you're placing all of the equipment. Things have to go up in a certain time frame, and things have to go up in a certain order. So like, for example, if you have a ton of rigging on a job, the rigging has to get done like ASAP, otherwise, and the staging, otherwise like you literally can't do some of the other stuff.
Right, yeah.
So there's a whole order, there's a whole process to it. And you're trying to get it done by a certain amount of time. So like, let's say, hey, we're starting load in at 11:30. We need everything set up and done by 5. Like that's kind of common. So you're just basically doing everything you can. If you're like, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you're probably not going to like be A1 in that role off the bat. Let's say you got hired as A2. That means A2, like as A2, it means your lead is A1. So whatever they tell you to do, whatever they ask you to do it.
And what are A1 and A2? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So A1, so that's audio 1, which is the audio lead on a job.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's A2, which is audio 2.
Okay.
Audio 1 is mixing the actual room.
Okay.
And in corporate settings, timing is everything. So they're in charge of firing all of like the things at the right time. So like stinger music, voice of God, which is like, welcome to the stage, Roy, like that kind of stuff. They're in charge of all of that, and they're in charge of the PA and all that fun stuff. A2 is the role that's in charge of like all of the RF coordination, and they're miking people up backstage, and they're also kind of a runner for audio, and typically like in corporate jobs for like other people too, because you have some downtime as A2.
Yeah. The wireless receivers.
Wireless
RF.
Receivers and transmitters. You're in charge of like the batteries and all that kind of stuff too, and just a lot of the time you're setting stuff up on stage audio wise, and sometimes like even not audio wise, like making sure that the lectern or the podium is like wired correctly, and that you've got all your cable runs done correctly, and everything is super clean and tidy. So those are kind of the two different roles as far as audio and corporate jobs go. So a lot of the time in these corporate jobs, there are tons of breakout rooms, and so you are in charge of the audio for all of the breakout rooms as well. So side note, as an A2, let me just give a little pro tip while we're here. Don't just coordinate your wireless, your RF for your main ballroom. You coordinate it for all the rooms on campus, because otherwise you're going to get in a real mess where if you've double assigned a channel and somebody is using it in breakout room 25 or whatever, they're going to hear it in the PA.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen before. It's a rookie move.
Yeah.
Just watch out for that. Pro tip. But anyway, so that's all happening. Load-in is going on. I skipped this one really crucial part. Once you arrive for load-in, whoever is the overall project lead is going to call a meeting and basically say, here's what we have to get done. Here's the time frame we needed to get done in. Here's who you report to, and kind of like, hey, like such and such, you report to John. He's A1 for this job.
Delegation
kind of deal. If you do that correctly, then everything can just run really smoothly.
Yeah.
So by the end of a load-in day, everything should be totally up. Your PA should be tuned. You should be pretty much ready to go for rehearsals. And so which brings us to like, at the end of that day, a lot of the time, like the whole crew will go out to eat together and get something and just kind of get to know each other a little better. And then, you hit the hotel, and then call time can vary widely. Sometimes it's super, super early. Sometimes it's not. Let's say call time's like 6:30 or something. That means like you show up and you're ready to work at 6:30.
Yeah.
And rehearsals start. There's typically a show caller, so everybody's like on comms, and the show caller, just like in theatrical productions, is telling you like what comes up next. And in corporate shows, everything is rehearsed to the nines. I mean, the whole point of corporate AV is like perfect, flawless execution and timing.
Yeah.
And so, you run through everything. You have people show up, you mic them, even if they're not about to like actually go on stage, so that mic placement and things, and you get it all totally dialed in. One thing A1 wise that you also will need to do is, because you're in charge of those voice of gods, you have to actually like typically people are using QLab, which is just a piece of software, and you have to like time those out and make sure they're all like going to fire correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of that happens at the hotel room because you just don't have time to actually like do it, which kind of stinks because you're like, oh, we just finished loadout, had dinner. Everyone else is going back to the hotel and chilling. And it's like, I'm going to sit here and crank out these Voice of Gods, the VOGs. Let's get them done. So anyway, all of that, like you go through the week. It's basically like you show up, you have a rehearsal, you do the show. Same thing, like rinse, lather, repeat, like over and over and over.
Yeah.
And if you're A2, sometimes they'll also send you to the breakout rooms to take care of those. Then the show ends, and then loadout happens. So basically, you're just doing the load in reverse. Stagehands typically come in, everything packs down. It's a good idea during load in to make sure that like you organize things correctly. So like make sure you know where the boxes are that you took things out of, and try to put them in a place where you can remember quickly where they are.
That'll help you for next time.
Exactly. Yep. So, loadout is quicker than load in typically. And the quicker you load out, the quicker you get to go home typically. So like do a good job, get it, be organized and go home. So, corporate shows can last anywhere from like 3 days up to like 5 days. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing. It's very similar in a music touring scenario. The only difference is going to be that you are like truly traveling from location to location to location all together a lot of the time. Whether like you're on a bus or, if like you're in a smaller situation like in a van and you're like staying at hotels or whatever. But it's the same exact process.
Yeah.
You're loading in. Hopefully you have some help. If you don't really know your way around a load in, just try to stay out of the way, but at the same time, like ask questions.
Be able to be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be able to be helpful. And if someone pushes something off a truck and it's a case like that ideally has a label on it and it's like, hey, this is a DSM. I don't even know what that means, but like, where does this go? And then you'll probably learn that stands for downstage monitor. And, you put that in this location or whatever.
Yeah.
But, same exact kind of deal. You're trying to hit these deadlines, these benchmarks of time to like get a rehearsal in, get a sound check, get a rehearsal in, and then do the actual show itself.
Right.
And touring is not for the faint of heart. I'm just like, I know it seems kind of like glamorous and cool or whatever, but like, and people are like, oh, you're getting to see the world. But like, you're getting to see the inside of
a conference hall.
And stadiums. And you're cranking out like 18-hour days back to back to back to back. And it can be tough.
Right.
So it can be a lot of fun.
Can be.
The thing that I think is fun about that is when you are with a crew that's just like really cool.
Yeah.
And like everybody's on the same page, everybody's chill, everyone has the same, I call it the same standard of excellence. Like one of my least favorite types of crews are crews where they're just like trying to move super quick and just get a sloppy job done.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. And so like I want things to look really clean and I want my cable runs to be nice. And I'm going to spend maybe just a little bit of extra time making it look good.
Yeah.
And not all crews are like that. But those are kind of my preferred people to work with.
Totally.
So
that goes a long way.
It does.
For not only for the production, the actual production that happens,
yeah,
but for just everyone's enjoyment and preserving the quality of the equipment and, just to make everything aesthetically pleasing is nice.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of an overview of that side of things.
Yeah.
So I kind of live in two utterly different worlds.
Right.
It's like I'm either home and it's pretty chill and I'm setting my own schedule and I'm just kind of like cranking through work and sending it out to clients and, moving on. Or I'm literally under the control of a completely different schedule that I do not set. And I'm just like showing up at these certain times, doing my work.
Yeah.
And going back to the hotel or whatever. And
yeah, that's right. That's good. It's good that you laid it out like that. I think maybe it would be nice to kind of, shed a little bit of light on what that could look like for our listeners to envision themselves into. Like in your roles, and you basically do the two sides of the coin kind of thing, right? I also do that, but not in the same way. Like when I'm at the venue doing the live shows, I'm in the same place every time,
Mm-hmm.
which is much different than what John's talking about with load in, load out in a different location that you may not be familiar with. When he says it's not for the faint of heart, it means that there can be a lot of curveballs,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, totally.
And you got to be prepared for that. And they're working on a time now. We're working on a time schedule too, and we need to finish sound check before the audience, the doors open, and so on and so forth. And sometimes I get curveballs, and sometimes we're having to hold the doors so we can finish sound check, or sometimes the audience is rolling in while we're still sound checking.
Oh, yeah.
Not great. Don't love that.
Do hate when that happens, for sure.
Yeah. But, so, things do happen. But like, if you're early on in your journey and you're trying to find the path to take, think about what you could see yourself doing, and then think about what kind of like personal traits you have and what you value. And I think it'll help you figure out what is the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Like what John does out on the road all the time would not be for me. Like I value being able to be home pretty much every night. Some nights is later than others. Like my hourly, daily schedule varies on what hours I am home and when, but I'm home pretty much every day as far as work is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And I have more control over the situation in both aspects. Taking a long time to get to that point, but in the studio, it can still be stressful and it can still be kind of fast paced, but it's a little more chill, right?
Yeah.
It should be, because if you put off an energy that is too fast or too aggressive, then it's not going to yield for a good product. So by nature, the studio realm is supposed to be a little more relaxing and comforting, right? So think about that whenever you're sitting out there and you're like, man, do I want to be the front house engineer for, such and such band? Or would I like to just, be in the studio and try to cut a record with such and such band?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly, man. And I think, I don't know, I think right now, like as of this podcast recording, there's kind of a trend that I'm noticing culturally with especially like younger engineers where they want to be a front of house engineer. They want to be on tour because it looks
There's some cool stuff.
It looks cool,
Yeah.
and like it's sexy. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're being honest, I think a lot of people's ego is kind of wrapped up in I'm a front of house engineer.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very important job.
It's very important, and
Yeah.
it's cool, and
Yeah.
it can be fun too. But at the same time, it's also like it takes a toll.
Yeah.
It takes a toll on you. It is actually work.
It's not easy. Yeah.
You're working for somebody still.
Yes.
And yeah, I love it. I really do. My preference, I mean, I mix front of house all the time. I actually love doing monitors for bands more than anything else.
That's right. Yeah.
Because it's basically similar to being a studio engineer.
Right.
It's like there's less pressure. You're hanging out with the band. You're kind of like getting to know them a little bit. You're making sure they know, like, hey, I got your back on this. We're gonna make you sound awesome. You're gonna have a good time out there. You're kind of like, hyping them up a little bit and making sure that they feel good and confident.
Right.
Which, by the way, is also, like in a corporate setting, definitely the role of an A2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
In theater setting, that's typically like the costume person because they're like getting them ready or whatever.
Right.
Like, I love those roles.
Yeah.
I love the roles where you're like, hey, listen, like, go out there, give it 100%. Like, you sounded awesome during sound check and rehearsal. Like, you're going to crush it. I'm stoked to hear what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, that gets people like, oh man,
Oh yeah.
like let's do this. You know?
Yeah.
And it's similar to being in a studio environment. So.
It is. It is. If they're doing something right, doing something that sounds good, tell them about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't hold it in or brush it by. Like, take a second to give them a compliment, because it'll not only is that just a nice thing to do, but it'll help them do even better, knowing that what they're doing is working.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they receive positive feedback, it always goes a long way.
Yeah.
But
And in that same light, like, do your best to avoid negative feedback. Don't sugarcoat. Definitely don't do that. Don't tell someone something is great, even if you don't think that it is, but tell them that it's not, it's not working, but frame it in a way that it doesn't hurt their feelings. Because there's nothing worse than being especially in a studio setup, and the engineer's like, that was awful. Like, you're just, I don't know what happened there, but, like,
that sucked.
That sucked. Or like, can you do any better? Like, that's going to crush their spirit, and they're not going to do any better after that, most likely. I mean, most people don't respond that way. And then on the other realm, on the stage, like, same sort of thing. It's probably a little different. There may not be as many opportunities or the reasons that you would need to portray that type of information. And, there it is what it is, probably more so in that, and there's less variation. But if something does come about, just handle it gently. Yeah. And people will remember that. Yeah.
I think the primary difference I've seen between offering any kind of advice between being a studio engineer and being like a monitor or front of house engineer is the band looks to a studio engineer a lot more for musical advice. Yeah. And that's totally fine. I will just say this, if you're going to offer any kind of feedback, in a live context, either as somebody's front of house engineer or as their monitor engineer, here's my approach. I typically, aside from like giving positive comments and just like when I think someone's really crushing it, letting them know, I don't say anything. Yeah. Aside from that, unless I'm specifically asked, hey, what did you think about this? Right. Because when I'm asked about it, I'm not going to get asked, first of all, unless there is a relationship that's already built there a little bit. And when you have the relationship, then you can actually speak into it. The other part of that, though, that I tell people when I'm training people, especially in church contexts, how to engineer, I tell them this all the time. Let me give a little context. There will be a church volunteer vocalist, for example, who like gets up there, maybe they're a little bit pitchy, they're not really that confident, and the person volunteering on the sound console will, say audibly to me or whatever, like, God, this person just like sucks. I can't even like get any sound out of them. Like, I wish they could like sing better and stuff. And I immediately go to this when I hear that. I'm like, hey, I would just really be hesitant to say anything unless you truly can do it better.
Right. Yeah. Who are you to say?
Yeah. If you can't, and that shuts people up pretty quickly. Like if you can't play that guitar line better than them, don't be complaining about how they're playing that guitar line.
That's right.
Now, I mean, there's another side of it. Like a lot of the time when I hear those issues, I can do whatever they're doing, but I still typically don't say anything.
Right.
It's not your job. It's not your role. It's like just wildly inappropriate.
It is. It's crazy that it is common though, that it happens. You hear about those stories a lot.
Yeah. And in fact, one quick story, one guy at a church, was there. We had a guy who was playing drums this one Sunday, and he played open-handed. And so every time he hit the snare, I mean, it cracked the snare. And we didn't have a fully isolated drum booth. And this was like in a gymnasium at a church. So, I mean, every time he hit the snare, like just cracked or whatever. And I knew that going in, I'd mixed this guy before, and, there are just ways that you have to just kind of deal with that. And it's not ideal, but it's fine. It really doesn't even have anything to do with the fact that he plays open-handed. Like, whatever. He's just a drummer playing drums in a totally untreated room. And this engineer that I was training, this volunteer, he left the talk back on, and he made a really rough comment about this guy and his playing. And the guy heard it, of course, in his ears. And it was a moment. Like, I've talked to this guy about it after the fact. Because I noticed the talkback was on and I turned it off, and I was like, so you're going to need to have a conversation with him as soon as this rehearsal's over. Oh, yeah. Or I'm not going to let you mix this service. And the guy's like, what? Come on, man. That's going to be so awkward. I'm like, yeah, you made it awkward. Like,
It's your fault.
it's your fault, man.
Yeah.
So he did it, and he apologized, and they came to an understanding, and, it was a little rough, but it's like, if you're going to say something, like, just you're going to have to deal with the consequences of saying whatever you say.
That's
So
right.
I just try to keep it positive.
Yeah, keep it positive. Or, what is the saying? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if that drummer had come back and had been like, hey, I feel like my snare tone is like really ringing out through the house. Is that accurate? Then he could be like, yeah, it actually kind of is. Could you maybe hit it just like a little softer?
Right.
Is that possible? Or
who knows what would have happened?
Who knows? Man.
Yeah, that's true.
But
that's
anyway,
true.
That kind of stuff is really important.
Yeah, be prepared for that for sure.
Yes.
Good deal. So, okay, so you've kind of explained a couple different scenarios and different days, and I've done the same thing, and there's little details and caveats in there too. Like you're gonna have to, like we said, you're gonna have to make time for some administrative work. I also need to take time to meet with artists, give tours of the studio.
Right.
I probably left that out earlier, but that does happen. And so, like I said, you're checking those emails, those inquiries. And I like to do those usually on mixed days because those days are more flexible, right? I can meet with them at, a number of given times and mix around those times, right? So artist relations is very important. And typically in the studio, I like to meet with the person in person if we can. If they're local enough that they can come by, they can check the studio out, we can sit down, we can talk about their project, and then go through the details, the process, and everything like that. If they're not, we'll do a phone call. So I'm on with them about that. I'm answering any questions. Hopefully they've at least seen some pictures. If they're from out of town and they're only able to come in for the session, then we do it that way, and that's fine. So all of that being said, I think we should spend just a little bit of time talking about scheduling and boundaries and workflow and how, because the reason that it doesn't, how does that work into the day of the life, right? That's really those things kind of shape the actual days in the life, right? They shape it that way. So if you can, at an early age or an early point in your career, if you can really master or hone in on those things, it'll make your days a lot smoother.
Yeah, it will.
It really will. And I feel like I've learned the hard way, just over time through experience, making mistakes to figure out what is the best way to schedule, where to set my boundaries, where to, how to, mold my workflow that works best for me. And it's taken a lot of time to get there. So in order to hopefully fast track that for some of the listeners, let's take a second to talk about it. So scheduling in the studio world, I feel like can be one of the hardest parts of it. I mean, let's assume that you've got the skills down, right? You can make a decent recording, even if you're just getting started. You're doing a good job with that. You're still learning, but you've got that. So how do you plan an album, right? Well, okay, so you're getting with the band. If we're in a band setting, you might be dealing with 5 different schedules, right? Some will overlap. Some may have a day job, some may not. Some may be in school. Some may work nights. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's where a couple things come into play. So you figure out what the common availability is for everybody. And if they're able to take off work to fit your schedule, great. But you got to be flexible enough to fit their schedule for sure. Because making time for them and showing that you're willing, to work with them and be flexible is going to go a long way. They're going to really appreciate that. And it just starts things off right,
Yeah.
And so you got to also set some boundaries for yourself. this was one of the things that I've learned the hard way. I'm still not even that great about it, to be honest. It's hard to do to say no to someone, right? And if you do say no, you usually the other person will expect some sort of reason, right? And sometimes like that's my day off, or I'm, let's just go with day off. That's my day off. It's sometimes, I don't know, it's sometimes hard to get that across that is important, right?
Yeah.
Why can't you just do this? It'll only take you an hour, right? Or less.
Right.
But you need to learn to stand firm on some of those things, or else you'll be working yourself to death. You'll find that you'll fall into some burnout with your job. You'll start to not like it as much if you fall into those traps.
Oh, yeah.
And we might touch on a whole episode on burnout and ways to avoid it.
Yes.
But that's important. So, like, how do you do that? Well, you could set certain hours, right? Like we've both mentioned when we typically work from when to where. When John says when his wife gets home at 5:15, he pretty much cuts it off. And that now is shifted from his work time to his personal time.
Right.
And, it would have to be probably an urgent situation that maybe he got a call about an upcoming gig that really there was something changed that's important for him to know, for him to turn that back on briefly and figure that out.
Right.
Otherwise, he's going to, if an email comes in, that's tomorrow's email, right? If a mix needs to be tweaked a little bit, that's for tomorrow, right? You have to set those boundaries so that, you can have a good work-life balance.
Yep.
It's easier said than done.
It is.
You'll find it is not an easy thing to put those boundaries in place. And I'm guilty of it just the same, answering an email at like 8:30, kind of sitting on the couch watching some TV with my wife, but feel like I should respond to this because I didn't quite get to it yesterday, and now we're moving into this. They're waiting too long for this response, right?
Right.
But it's better for you. It's a healthier thing to do,
is, yeah.
Right?
I think another part of the boundaries thing that I'm learning, and I can't remember how much of this part of my story I've shared, but I just recently stepped into doing this freelance stuff full time. Like I always had like a pretty stable, day job. Well, working at a church as a production director is not exactly a day job, but like I had a stable job.
An audio industry job that had more set hours,
exactly.
Or more regular hours.
Exactly. So, I've been doing it, I guess, like 6-7 months now or something like that. And I'm already learning a ton about this exact thing. And here's a perfect example. My wife and I had planned to go on a small vacation, like a weekend vacation in Virginia, which is actually coming up. We leave tomorrow, like as of when this podcast is being filmed. We said yes to this trip with some friends, and literally 2 days after I said yes, so we put it on the calendar, I get a call from one of the production companies I work with, and they're like, "Hey man, are you available, these dates?" And they're like smack dab in the middle of this vacation that we've said yes to. And I'm like, man, if I took this job, that would be several $1,000s in my pocket. That would be sweet.
Right.
And I'm like, but
that would cancel the trip.
It would cancel my trip. So I said no. I held on to it. Literally 10 minutes after I hang up the phone, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I have vacation scheduled. And they totally understood.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm sacrificing future work.
Right.
They get it. I get another phone call from another production company, and they're like, hey, man, we need somebody for these dates. Totally different job, totally different location and everything. Same dates.
Yeah.
Of
course.
They're like, hey, could you squeeze this in? And I'm just like, Nope,
can't do it.
Nope, can't do it, guys.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. But that was the right thing to do.
Yes, I agree. But it still is hard.
It is.
When you do this, when you do what we do for work, even though we do different things yet similar, you are working and making money, or you're not working.
Yeah.
And you're not making money.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is kind of your wages
Mm-hmm.
the money that you make is tied to an hourly or a gigly, a certain event time frame or set, right? So if you're not working those hours, you're not making any money.
Right.
And that it's different than salary, right?
It is.
Like you're getting paid a set amount per year. You know that you do work set hours, but if you don't, maybe you have a little bit of overtime, maybe you don't, but it's not the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
You can fluctuate how much or less you get.
Mm-hmm.
And as like scheduling and your time management like improves over the years, once you kind of see where you fall or what path you end up taking, you'll start to figure out like what you need in your budget and how many gigs you need or how many songs you need to produce or how many, events you need to run. But like John said, it's tough to say no to some of those things. One, because you're gonna miss that specific opportunity or that chunk of money that you may need at the time, but you're choosing friends or family over that, which is ultimately probably the better choice.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, every time.
And pretty much every time.
Yep.
Unless you're really struggling, but then, you're working all the time anyway.
Right.
So, try not to get to that point.
Yes.
Got to make time for friends and family first and foremost. But then in the back of your mind, and this has happened to me before, you're also thinking, well, if I say no to this, they might not ever call me back. I might not get hired the next time they need someone to do this. And this would be a cool thing. I just, the scheduling, the days didn't work out.
Yeah.
I would be available and would love to do this, but not this time.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking to yourself, dang, maybe I should take this one just so I can make sure that to build that relationship. And the temptation is hard, but you can't do everything all the time.
You can't.
You really can't.
And I'll say this too, the way that you say no to something will dictate in a lot of ways whether you get a call again.
Yeah.
Like
explain.
Explain and just be like, hey, I can't do it this time. You don't necessarily have to tell them why, but just say, hey, I've already got something on the books or whatever. But make it clear, hey, here are some other dates I'm available.
Yeah. Try.
I've got these dates available. If you have some time there and you want to work together, like I would love to fit you in there.
Absolutely.
And let them know you're not just saying no to them. You truly just don't have time in your schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and that happens to me continuously in the studio because it just happens. It's just the way that it is. Sometimes whether the artist is just getting started or, maybe they haven't been in the studio much throughout their journey and they don't realize how much time each project takes. So therefore, they don't understand that the studio can't fit me in next week.
Right.
Right.
All
the time or that day. All right.
Oh, that's fun.
When I get a call midday and they're like, hey, is the studio open tonight? I want to get in and do a couple hours of recording. Like,
sometimes I get mastering requests that are literally like, hey, can we have this by the end of the day? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? You're just going to put it in ozone, right? I'm like, absolutely not.
You've called the wrong person.
You've called the wrong guy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Nope.
And it's so funny. I tend to get a lot more, I guess it's just because the people are off work or whatever, but I get a lot of calls around the holidays.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get a lot of emails and calls like, hey, I was hoping to jump in the studio the day before Christmas or something like that. Or Thanksgiving. It happens a lot.
Man.
4th of July. And it's probably because they may have an extra day off of work, but do they not think that I'm just skipping Christmas or Thanksgiving to be in the studio?
Right. I know, man.
It's crazy.
Funny.
It's crazy sometimes.
I think that kind of stuff gives you insight onto how much people work.
Yeah, so they'll hit me up on the holidays, which is very interesting, but obviously I have to say no to that. But yeah, like in the studio, I'll tell them, well, hey, our next available date is such and such. Whether, sometimes it's 3 weeks away. Most of the time it's 6 to 8 weeks away. Sometimes it's further. Just depends. That's the one oddity of the studio business. I mean, the show business can be similar in that way, but like the project load is random. in a certain way. Like sometimes you got like a lot that you're working on. Sometimes it is a little seasonal. And I've talked about that in other episodes just from what I've noticed for myself. But I feel like it's a little universally that way. But still, like, you never know. And so it's hard to hear on the other end that you can't do it for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And at that point, usually in my responses, like if that is where I'm at with the schedule and I've actually got, like right now is a pretty good example of time, but where I'm working on 3 or 4 albums at the same time. And so what I'll have to say is like, hey, you know, if they've sent a demo, like I listened to your demo, let's say I do like it. I like your demo. I would, you know, this style of music is something that I do well. I do a lot of. I think we could work together, and I would like to do that in the future. But I am booked until, you know, it'll be a couple months until we could start. Like we could potentially go back and forth on some pre-production throughout that time, but I won't really be able to get into recording the record until such and such date. And then what I say is, I understand that that is a ways away and that may be too long for you to wait. And in those cases, I'll usually have to refer them to another studio. All the while letting them know that I am available at that point and that if they are able to wait, if they're not in a rush, is usually what I'll say. If they're not in a rush, then let's keep in touch about it. And if you want to guarantee that, then we can talk further about that and secure those dates for you.
Right.
That gives them the option. It still hopefully paints the studio in a decent light that, yes, we do want to work with them. It just can't do it on the time frame that they were hoping for.
Yeah.
But if that is absolutely not going to work for them, then I've given them another option.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
not bad.
That's good, man. And it's good to have a network that you can refer people to as well.
Yeah.
Because I do that with mastering too.
Yeah.
If you want it done tomorrow, like, cool. Here's, contact these people.
Right. So one of them might be able to do it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So, another couple quick things, be careful maybe giving out your cell phone number to people. If you don't want your clients to text you late at night, then keep it within email. That could be a little boundary thing. Same thing with phone calls. I guess that falls into the same category. But basically set some healthy boundaries for yourself in the studio or on the road, and try to stick to them. Easier said than done.
Sure.
We both know it. We're guilty of the opposite.
For sure. Yeah.
But, it's something that you may need to learn over time. But hopefully you've found some good information in today's episode and can take that to heart. And hopefully it'll make your journey a little bit easier.
Yes, hopefully so.
Yeah.
We've made some mistakes.
Yes.
Please learn from us.
Yes, and we will probably continue, but we'll tell you about them. So
we will tell you about them all.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. So let's wrap it up with what are you doing?
Oh, cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. What are you
well,
up to?
Aside from about to leave on vacation, I just finished that post-production edit on some audio that I got sent for this film job, and I've kind of become a fix-it guy for post-production. I mean, there are several people who now call me up when they're film guys and they're like, "Hey man," and whenever one of the phone calls starts with, "Hey man, I really screwed up this audio recording," and so just doing a bunch of manual gain automation and cleaning things up and just getting it to sound sort of halfway decent depending on what they did.
Listenable, right?
Yeah. This particular one, the only mic that the person brought was a cardioid large diaphragm condenser, and they just kind of set it up for a couch recording thing, and they set it up 15 feet away.
Oh gosh.
It was really bad. So I basically took that plus cam audio and did a ton of stuff to de-reverb it and try to get some clarity out of it, and did what I could.
Hey.
They were really happy with it. They're like, I did not think it could sound
great,
usable.
Yeah.
So I'm like, great, neither did I.
Yeah, right. We were hoping for the best on this one.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
So,
it's cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in the mix phase for several records that I'm working on right now. I just finished the Timmy Sherrill record that was the solo acoustic kind of live thing
Mm-hmm.
that I did. Just finished that up, and he's all happy with that. I am
Nice.
too. I think it turned out pretty good. So he's getting ready to go through the distribution phase of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to send the episode that we talked about
Oh,
that
yeah,
with,
that'd be good.
because he's like, I haven't really done a whole lot of this, so maybe I'll steer him in
Oh,
that
yeah.
direction. Jim Ellis, I'm working on his EP. He's got 4 songs that we finished all the recording, and that's also in the mix phase too. So
Sweet.
yeah, so we'll be spending a lot of time mixing around here, which is
Good stuff.
I love that.
Yeah, man, that's what you want to do.
That's right.
Awesome.
So, all right, I think that wraps it up for episode 8 here. I hope that you guys have taken something from our conversation, and give us a like, give us a subscription. Doesn't cost you anything. Drop a comment. Let us know if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, or if you've learned anything to take away from this episode. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Let us know what's helping you.
That's right.
Cool.
All right. Until next time.
Steady the path.
Steady the path.